First, welcome Phyllis King from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, who's going to introduce our next speaker.
Ajita Talwaker Menon, Senior Policy Advisor in the Office of the Undersecretary of the United States Department of Education, was previously the Education Policy Advisor to the House Committee on Education and Labor. Earlier, she was policy analyst at the Institute of College Access and Success and the James H. Dunn Fellow in the Office of the Governor of Illinois. She has a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, where she organized campaigns to expand educational access for students and served a 2-year term at the United States Student Association. She also holds a master's degree from Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. And I have to say, as Vice Provost of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, I can't tell you how pleased and how proud I am to introduce a very successful alum. She's one that's not only helping improve the lives of students today, but also for future generations. So I welcome Ajita.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Let me begin by thanking Phyllis King and her Sarah Rob for pulling this incredible event together. It's a very timely conversation, and I'm very excited to be a part of it. Some of you may know that I am a Milwaukee native. I was born here, I grew up here, I went to college here, and I grew up on the northwest side of the city. And in doing so, I've really had the opportunity to kind of bear witness to some of the challenges and struggles that have faced our communities and plagued our community. And to really be able to participate in fighting to make things better. These are lessons that have stayed with me every day and really drive, for me, the work that I do on a day in, day out basis. As I stand here, I'm reminded that Milwaukee, and that goes for so many other places like Milwaukee, both urban and rural, has experienced some of the most challenging economic times that we've seen in generations, but it still carries with it a spirit of resilience and a diligence in the way that we actually approach the challenges and addressing the challenges facing our communities. Particularly the commitment that so many of us in the city and state have to continue fighting for educational opportunity and economic opportunity, particularly within the state college and university system. My experience at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee was really about cultivating an understanding of civic responsibility, of the learning tools needed to fight for social and economic justice on my campus, in my community, developing knowledge and skills to effectively identify solutions to the immediate and persistent challenges facing students in the community, and ultimately realizing the power of collective action in bringing about the kind of change that can really transform the everyday lives and experiences of our fellow community members. While federal policy making for some can seem very far away from that kind of direct action work where I started, it still really drives me. It's the way that I wake up in the morning and the way that I orient myself in what I do every day. I am lucky enough to be able to be a part of the team that serves our country and works for someone who sets that standard every day, leading the country and always pushing us and his staff to redefine what's possible, even in the face of tough opposition. I wanted to share with you, actually, one of my early campaign experiences that I was involved in here in Wisconsin, in addition to work to get out the vote and work to organize for greater financial aid and campus diversity. And it was a fight to restore educational opportunity within the TANF program. This was in the early years, right after TANF passed, when communities were just starting to really brace for the impact of the changes and the real threat that it presented for educational opportunity. And by extension, the threat it placed to the economic success for so many low-income Americans. I don't have to tell you that some of you in this room have worked on these issues for many years now, but it was a particularly successful campaign. But I've been reflecting on it a lot in advance of today's conversation and meeting because it really underscores to me the importance of the effort. Of this convening and really of kind of the growing national conversation around food and housing security amongst undergraduates. It underscores how much this matters for us to be able to better define and really lay value to the role that food, housing, and securities and these kind of basic life needs are as an essential part of ensuring real and meaningful educational opportunity. Where we are in this kind of moment in the conversation is about raising the understanding of what we're learning in the data and what the field is really teaching us about generating solutions at all levels. And what I hope will grow from this conversation and from this effort is how we can use that data and information and promising practices to really raise the profile of the challenge ahead of us and the opportunity that we all have to collectively shape the solutions in this space. To start, I want to mention, and I probably don't have to tell those of you who work on the advocacy side, that there is a real gap in education when we talk about today's college student. Too many policymakers have a very singular view of what that prototypical college student looks like that doesn't really reflect reality. And our approaches to address college affordability from the administration perspective have really been an effort to push back against that current. The President strongly believes that all hardworking individuals should have the opportunity to pursue an education that gets them the knowledge and skills to be successful in our growing economy. For our nation's colleges and universities to serve as a gateway to social mobility and to economic opportunity, they must succeed in helping all hardworking students, regardless of their income, their race, parents' education, to enroll in college, to graduate, and to go on to rewarding careers. That's part of the reason that we've focused so much on the investment side, doubling investments in scholarship aims to help students and families pay for college, including tax credits. We've increased the maximum Pell Grant award by $1,000, which has helped over 8 million students a year, low and moderate income students pay for college annually. And it's why we're continuing to fight for greater investment in the Pell Grant program, to shore up its purchasing power, to create incentives for student persistence, and to help students pay for the costs of accelerating their studies year-round. We've established also the partially refundable American Opportunity Tax Credit, which offers students $10,000 for 4 years of college to cover tuition and other educational expenses. And we expect that about 10 million families we pay more than $18 million in taxes in the 2016 year. We've also worked to cap student loan payments at 10% income and work with Congress to try to keep interest rates as low as possible on federal student loans. And really on the back end, we focused on helping those that are struggling with student debt, particularly students who that educational opportunity may not have worked out for, to ensure that they're better connected with options to manage their debt and to avoid negative consequences of defaulting on their loans. We've also taken a series of steps to simplify the FAFSA, making it available earlier to align it with the college application process, and we'll continue to provide better guidance on the interaction between financial aid and other benefit programs like AOTC to make it easier for folks, guiding students through the process to better understand how students can really maximize the resources that are available to them. And I'll just pause there because that's the area of opportunity that I think there's been a lot of great work on and a lot of opportunity for us to continue to take action on. In all of this work, I want to mention that we're actually changing our perspective in how folks are looking at things, focusing more acutely than ever through the eyes of current students, former students, and of prospective students, and using that user-driven feedback to provide accurate and better actionable information to connect folks with the benefits and resources available to them to meet the full cost of their education. The other area of work in addition to policy change that we think of in a traditional sense, which is, at the federal level changes to laws or regulations, have been the administration's efforts to drive change through collective action. Under the President and First Lady's call to action around supporting greater college opportunity, we've seen over 700 commitments from colleges and universities, businesses, philanthropies, and nonprofits to make commitments that ensure more Americans that are facing real barriers to educational opportunity are enrolling in college, but also are not just enrolling, but set up to succeed in college. And we're starting to see a lot of the progress from that effort, which I want to share largely because how, to me, this model demonstrates that there is a transformative power in these individual actions across the collective movement. So one of the areas where the President and First Lady have really focused is on, as you know, increasing the number of students and the number hundreds of thousands more complete a college credential by 2025. And what we're hearing from the reporting back from that progress is how these commitment makers have put on track 10 million more students to graduate by 2025. A significant part of those efforts are really addressing the gap in academic preparation that a lot of students are entering college underprepared for, and this challenge of remediation. And with the commitments made through the process, forming remediation and really contextualizing remediation to help students at all levels, not just those students coming out of high school, have the opportunity to enroll in college and move through more successfully than in the traditional developmental sequence, has geared about 350,000 students from taking unnecessary remedial coursework, which can be a huge barrier to them progressing in their education. The other one I wanted to highlight was the work of really strong K-12 partnerships and communities with colleges, with philanthropy, with business. And these partnerships have set a collective set of goals to help more than 100,000 students become college ready, combining strengthening academic expectations, the support systems available in the community to help the students be successful, and to leverage the community resources in a way that can have a greater impact and help more students. And these commitment makers actually report having an additional $135 million in new investments to higher education to strengthen the collective work on access to affordable living and success for students coming out of high school, particularly in areas that are lowest income. Those commitment makers have catalyzed more than 40,000 new partnerships between high schools, counselors, access groups, nonprofits, and business. And it is a very powerful demonstration of the way that some of the conversations that you're having about what's happening in different parts of the country can be threaded together to demonstrate what's possible nationally. Finally, as most of you know, the President announced a vision for America to make 2 years of college as universal as high school was a century ago. The President's America's College Promise Plan is to make 2 years of college, community college free for responsible students so that millions of more Americans can really get the knowledge and skills they need to be successful. When the President made the announcement, it was not something that I think we thought we would blink overnight and the new $60 billion federal program would be introduced. What he saw in it was how articulating a vision like this can really only be fully achieved when communities come together to share the responsibility across states, across schools, across employers, across nonprofits, and in conjunction with students and families. And I will tell you that we are actually seeing exactly that. Since the President's announcement, our very own Senator Tammy Baldwin from the great state of Wisconsin has introduced legislation along with Congressman Bobby Scott from Virginia called the America's College Promise Act of 2015 as a marker for this kind of action at the federal level. And 27 new free community college programs have emerged in states and communities and in community colleges across the country, ranging from Salt Lake City, Utah, to Woodlands, Texas, and right here in Wisconsin at Milwaukee Area Technical College, and Madison Area Technical College, Gateway Technical College, and Technical College. States and communities have been demonstrating to us, even beyond, I think, what we thought we would see, that with the drive and the will, they can actually marshal the resources needed to design thoughtful and effective tuition-free programs that are customized to address state and local needs, but that are centered around supporting students through being successful in these programs. These announcements have collectively invested over $70 million in new public-private investments and are going to actually help 40,000 students at community colleges, attend community colleges. This is in addition to the administration's investments over the past several years. In total, about $70 million in investments directly to community colleges, Pell Grants, through Title III, Title V funding, through the workforce system. And earlier this week, we actually introduced a $100 million new program that will be available later this summer to seed this kind of work in communities, to put a down payment on these efforts that are already ongoing to see how much more energy and excitement and work we can generate. Again, but mostly these are highlights of examples of what's possible with collective action troubling. While we've done a great deal to help that ensure that finances are not a barrier to educational access, the data on food and housing security and mental health challenges shows us that for some of our neediest students, we're not doing enough. That greater support is needed, including supports beyond financial aid. We need more action at the campus level, at the local level, at the state level, and there is certainly more that we can do to advance the conversation at the national level. And that's part of the reason that we're here today, because we all share this commitment, and our collective challenge is to sort of identify how we can better serve low-income students, how to better understand the needs of non-traditional and near-traditional students, and what kind of particular support we can offer them as they're managing through these very challenging barriers to their educational success. And it's really an opportunity for us to further brainstorm the action that we can take to advance the conversation, and that includes strengthening the resources that are available, coordinating the benefits that are identifying and promoting those promising practices that are happening in local communities to meet students' needs, and to really support a culture of mutual learning among institutional leaders who are emphasizing these opportunities for improvement and for doing better. These are shared challenges with opportunities for shared solutions, and as the President said, it's an all-hands-on-deck approach. We all have a role to play in strengthening the system so that more students can access an affordable, quality education. And I'll close with that and open it up for questions. And thank you again for the opportunity to be here today and really for your work and for your partnership as we tackle these challenges that give us the greatest opportunity to really impact educational opportunities, student success, and equity.
We're going to go ahead and do questions. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here. It's really wonderful to have you. So we released a proposal in the last couple of days, and I know that I haven't sent it your way yet, but we released a proposal for expanding the National School Lunch Program to higher education. And one reason for doing this during the current administration's term is that America's College Promise, as you discussed, is aiming to rethink how we do college affordability. And so I wondered, what are some of the strategies or things that you're thinking that could go along with, right, getting rid of the tuition at the community colleges? What are the things being considered there?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. I will be really honest with you. In the time that we have left, it's going to be very challenging to do the kind of big list that I think we might have had the room to do earlier. So I think it is a lot about table setting, and I think it is a lot about how we infuse this in the structure of the conversation. I think the biggest part of this is making sure that people understand that tuition is not the full cost of education. And we've had a lot of educating to do on that front and in that conversation. We spent a lot of time talking about why the program that the President proposed was the first college program, why it was about having the program cover tuition and fees so that federal financial aid can stretch farther and cover a greater share of the cost of unmet need that students and families have. And emphasizing that point in the conversation, I think, is a huge part of that. I think the other piece of that is this still feels, because it's an early conversation to folks, so I could say I'm roughing it with my ramen noodles kind of conversation, when the reality around this is reflecting something entirely different. These are our students that are in our classrooms that are sometimes with families. There are students in our classrooms that are coming in from all types of different experiences, and there is a lot more to be done in terms of figuring out how the conversation around funds programs is not just a conversation about scholarships, it's a conversation about holistically addressing the needs to make students successful. And I think you're starting to see that in a lot of the models that are developed. You're seeing much more wraparound service-related models being built, and those tend to be more expensive models, but they also tend to have a scalable opportunity to bring down costs. So a great example is of one of the work, and I often highlight this program, which is the ASAP program, which basically says what are sort of the main areas of challenges that students are facing to improve their education. One was the academic structure of the program. One was something as simple as transportation or bus passes. One was childcare. One was the tuition waiver. You're sort of seeing very similar threads of out what works the best to support different aspects of the challenges that students are facing and really structuring them into a program. And you're seeing more and more communities that think really approach it that way. Mentorship is another area that we've seen a lot of successful infusion that has delivered a lot of strong results. So I would just say, like, I think it's continuing to have that conversation broadly, and we're certainly from our end trying to do that.
My name is Winslow from Bunker Hill Community College in Boston, and thank you for coming. I have two messages and one question, but I really would be kind enough to tell President Obama my two messages. The first is he's got 8 months. Please make sure that this free lunch program happens. We'll do what we can to help. And please tell him that if he wants to stay for a third term, that would be fine. My question, if you could help us, is obviously everybody here is engaged in these issues, but how do we become most effective? What do you see to be most effective to be heard? Because there's a lot of noise out there, and we can take joy in our daily accomplishments, but the ship is still sinking.
Yeah. No, I think it's an important point. I think that, we don't tell people to lobby, but I think there's a huge, as I mentioned, educational campaign that's needed at all levels of policy making for folks to really understand the dimension of the problem and the fact that there are real solutions, and a lot of those solutions can be cost-effective solutions. And so the more that we are highlighting and breaking through with examples of places that are doing this, and, with limited resources and could scale but for those resources, I think that is the strongest case that we can make when everybody is saying very similar things. I think that's one key part of it. I think you've actually already seen a lot of change. I think where a lot of the conversation in this cycle has been around debt-free education, free college, all these sorts of things. There was not even room for that conversation a couple years ago. So I think you are seeing a shift as people are starting to not only value it more, but understand that it's possible to do. So I think sort of the demonstration through example and action is the strongest thing we can do. And we are certainly using every really public platform that we have to really highlight those points.
So I appreciate you talking about the notion of remediation and college preparedness, and so I'm really curious, the places where I've seen initiatives around this. One of the things we bump up against is the notion of mandating curriculum and academic freedom, and obviously with conversations in K-12 around Common Core and some of the more mandated curriculum, there's a lot of controversy there. So I'm not suggesting we do mandated curriculum, but what I'm really curious about is how do we then bring initiatives that are successful to institutions without creating some of that controversy?
So I actually think this is one of those areas that has a really strong practitioner research base, and you're seeing that practitioner base really grow. So I think, you take the example of math remediation, there's 2 or 3 main models of math remediation reforms that have been particularly effective and have really good results. And so, you have organizations on the advocacy side that have said, this is a problem, states are wasting money, institutions are wasting money, and creating kind of space for that conversation to happen. And you have, other networks, like thinking of like Achieving, who does a lot of the work at the campus institution level around reform, the Carnegie Project on the Almost That Way work, and Bernie Trice's work in Texas, the Project. Their phones are ringing off the hook. So I think what is great about that is that there is an excitement amongst the leadership on campuses to really try and tackle this tackle this challenge. And I think that's a level of engagement in the intimate academic decisions around curriculum that's an incredibly important marker to have at a campus level. And so I feel feel like that is happening from the way that it should, which is from the ground up.
I think there's a challenge in that ground up piece in some ways, and as a practitioner who has managed a program that's considered a best practice, and talking with my successor who's here as well, that program is doing 100+ hours of consulting on a regular basis. That's time away from serving the students that they are supposed to be best practicing on. And so that's a significant issue that I think is important to think about as we are developing programming and as we are developing initiatives.
Yeah, I have to say, it is not a substitute for policy, and I do not ever mean to suggest that it is. I think, from our perspective, we are having big policy conversations. There's an opportunity with the reauthorization. I don't think any of us are holding our breath for the timing of that. And so we're sort of, I think this president has been very out front on doing what we can with what we have the opportunity to do it with. So you bring up a very important point, particularly the alignment issues, the alignment between K-12 and alignment between junior and 4-year. It's not really possible without state level policy change. It's part of, we've tried to get at this issue and about the state investment issue from a variety of different fronts. Where we ended up, for example, on the America's College Promise was really, it is not just a scholarship program, it is about leveraging institutional reform through state policy, through state investment, as well as through institutional reform. And so using incentive dollars to do that, using performance as a metric to do that, and not performance in a blind way, but in a way that is focused on the outcomes for the students. So I think we have the same policy framework I think you probably have, and I think it's just going to take more work for all of us to see that part realized.
Before I left Arizona and came to the graduate program, one of the things that I did was I went around Arizona and I talked to 70 years at the highest levels of the industry on my own time and on my own time, try to get a sense of why Arizona stayed, we're in last place in terms of schools. And so there seems to be a disconnect between people who are in the power structure and actually the people who are in the districts. And I want to know if you can tell me a little more about how we might connect with states at the federal level to try to improve the situation for students.
I mean, it's largely in terms of the engagement from employers or aligning the needs with.
So we don't have a lot of funding there, the legislature, we want to fund education. And so we're trying to think about how is it we can improve education. For us, it's not just about education, really. We're talking about a whole generation of students. It's about life chances. And so the way that these students go in the pipeline, so goes Arizona. But because we can't get leaders within the state to respond appropriately, we need some sort of support and some sort of pressure from outside.
Yeah, to be real honest with you, we have very limited tools at the federal level to drive that kind of change at the state level. And so, so I mentioned some of the ways in which we've been trying to influence what happens at the state level, which is not without its challenges. I think the other thing we've been trying to incentivize with respect to getting employers to the table and in the conversation, and in some cases out front leading the conversation, has really been what we've done on the workforce side through the investments in community colleges. So we had the $2 billion tax investment, and that was pretty much requiring folks to come to the table with community colleges to do curriculum design, but also to bring employer resources at the table. And this new $100 million program that I was mentioning is similar in structure. So it requires a consortia approach which has everybody at the table, which includes the folks from the employer community. And what we find is when employers are at the table, they're not only willing to talk frankly about the skills that they need for the jobs that are available, but they're willing to also put in a lot of resources, sometimes monetary resources, sometimes opportunities for folks to interview and have to, first opportunity to interview. We've also seen them actually support capacity building for programs at institutions. So I think what we try to incentivize in lieu of kind of the limits that we have in terms of a more heavy-handed approach to the state
for-profit prisons have a contract with the state of Arizona to keep the beds 95% full. And I've worked with local organizations like Gangs and Jobs, and what I learned from the people who are coming out is that right about a month before they come out, there's this kind of reverse meaning that manifests when they start getting demerits that extends their time in the prison. That's kind of a modern slavery. So, and the governor was the one who actually ushered that type of business in Arizona. So we're interested in more business, but we don't want business that's going to ruin people's lives.
Yeah, no, I think that's I will just mention one thing since you brought up the incarceration piece, which is we've also been looking at, within the context of the education programs and financial aid programs, making sure that we're expanding opportunities for folks who also could have otherwise faced exclusion. And the Second Chance College pilot program that the department announced is a key part of really driving at how we hold educational opportunity out of the criminal justice system, and how challenging that has been, not just for the individuals who are incarcerated, but for the families from which they come. And so we are hopeful that that is another opportunity for us to develop like a strong case for why these sorts of opportunities need to be a part of the conversation around criminal justice reform.
So you have a pretty committed and motivated captive audience here. Some of us are researchers, practitioners, students, right? We're kind of across the board. But if you had one or two key asks for what you would like to see those of us in this group do over the next 8 months or so to support goals related to college affordability, what are some things that we should be doing and thinking about?
It's a great question. I have a long list, so I think the biggest thing that can be done is threading together the efforts. So I think it feels not only lonely, it feels less impactful when it's one program here and one program there. And so like something that we're doing with different free community college programs is looking at what the common threads are and what makes a program like so the most successful or has successful outcomes, to really design a kind of playbook for how communities can do it. What are the 6 essential things that folks should do to do these programs, and what needs to be brought to the table in order to do that, to sustain that. And so I think in the context of particularly with food, housing, and security, I think because that's such that is absent largely from the conversation right now. I think coming together around basically what we know about the research, having a common research agenda, and saying, based on what we know now, these are the 4 or 5 playbook examples of the actions that campuses can take, what we need to take to do stuff. And I think some of that is in the brief that was released. I think more of that and more advocacy around that is really the right next thing.
Thank you. I'm Louise Stroke. I'm from University of Wisconsin-Madison. I was a representative of UW-Madison at the Big Ten conference that was just at MATC that you spoke at, and I'm so grateful. We're so proud to call you an alum of Wisconsin. So thanks for chatting with us there. And so one thing I wanted to mention is, before you came in, we had a chance to talk with Kyle Learman. And UW-Madison asked the question, so at our institution, when it comes to housing and food security and first-generation low-income students, opening access to disadvantaged students who finally have a chance at college that they've deserved the whole time, we find that our university will say that they simply don't have the funds or the resources at the institutional level to assist those students. So in efforts to meet the Obama administration's push toward college completion and having higher college completion numbers, they simply stopped. They started admitting less and less first-generation students, low-income students, and started admitting more and more out-of-state residents who can pay the full bill. And they say that they don't have the resources to assist these low-income students getting through college. And I wanted to understand from the President's viewpoint in the last 8 months how he stands on what Secretary John B. King recently said, that higher education may in fact be becoming a caste system, whereby we're sort of reproducing the inequities and calling on elite public and private institutions like Menon to do more for low-income students.
So in efforts to still meet, Obama administration's call for better college completion rates, how would you call on universities like ours to do more, or can Obama be supportive of the Department of Ed's push to really hold by institution accountable?
Yeah, I mean, the president is certainly the architect of the push, and he regularly, I think, goes as far as reprimanding that kind of action. I think what is unfortunate about it is, he has said, and former Secretary Duncan has said, and John King has also said, this is all a reflection of our values. And so, resources are always going to be tight. It is unfortunately a little bit of a domination as to how tight they are in the state of Wisconsin right now, personally speaking. But I will say that, it requires a level of prioritization to, if the resources aren't available, make the resources needed. And I know that is easier said than done, but I will provide a small example from my old experience in my article, which is, while at the University of Wisconsin, we were very conscious of the fact that the demographics of campus did not really reflect the demographics of this community. And fighting for and thinking about how we could work with the campus administration to really examine how to do a plan to change that. And it was lucky for us that there was Plan 2008, which was the mandated plan, statewide for campus diversity and an opportunity to shape, because there was that one-tenure governance, to do that. And, we had a great chancellor, Nancy Stenberg, who's now at the State University of New York system, who's doing a lot of great work along those there as well, to really sort of say, we're going to do a fundraising campaign, and we're going to focus a lot of the fundraising resources on getting more students of color and students from lower backgrounds in our classrooms. And we're going to work with students to prioritize that. And so, part of it is an economic reality based on the need for campuses to kind of stop the bleeding in terms of state investment, which we're very, we point out a lot. And part of it is that prioritization and commitment that campus leadership needs to have to ensuring that they're doing the most that they can to leverage educational opportunity. I probably said too much there, but
That was amazing. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
I know it's possible.
All right, how do we set the table for the next administration? What are the things we can actually do that? Tell us through, right? This is a tricky thing to do, right? And as you said, that's the task now. So what are the things we can actually do to set the table?
So I think you guys are doing a lot of it. So I think the convening is certainly a first step. The data release is certainly a first step. I think we are, we have found success in looking at basically key folks from each of the constituency groups that are able to, that includes business folks and other folks who can have different parts of this conversation with different audiences to be able to say the same thing. And I think whether that is I don't know what that looks like. If that is a national campaign to do something, if that is a national board that is comprised of these folks that are focused on these particular issues, finding those real champions in the leadership around these set of issues, I think has been tremendously helpful in other areas and tremendously successful at, in the community college context for America's College Promise. There's been a bipartisan advisory board that Dr. Biden is the honorary chair for, and that has been a really important part of really demonstrating that it's not just the president's issue or some Democratic issue or Republican issue, but that is an economic, the future of economic states and global